So welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today for this Q&A about the public affairs specialist position in Germany for GFI Europe. I'm Catherine and Ivo. I'm the talent acquisition and DI specialist here at GFI Europe. And with me is Ivo. Ivo, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Ivo. I live in Berlin. I'm a senior public affairs manager at the Good Food Institute. And before joining the Good Food Institute, I worked in some other jobs related to communications and policy work. The last one was in the aviation industry, and I have been with GFI for almost a year now.
So I imagine you would all know a little bit about GFI Europe, but I can just maybe say a word of introduction. So GFI Europe is an international nonprofit. We started in the US in 2016 and then expanded to other areas of the globe. So we now have affiliates in Brazil, India, Israel, Asia Pacific, and obviously Europe. I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. And our goal is to help build a more sustainable, secure, and just food system by revolutionizing how we produce meat. And so we're here today to chat about this new position within our policy team. So this is a public affairs specialist role in Germany. Maybe to start with, Ivo, you could tell us a little bit about the policy work that we do at GFI Europe in general, and then maybe about the work stream in Germany.
Yes, so at GFI in Europe, we have 5 teams, and policy is our policy team is one of these 5 teams. At the moment, we are 7 people in the policy team, and we are working on 2 levels. We're working on the one hand in Europe, especially at the European Union, on the European level, and we have a couple of colleagues who work in pan-European roles on several work streams. For example, the question of R&D funding for alternative proteins is one work stream. But we also decided in the last year that we want to expand our work on the national level, that we not only want to have dedicated roles for work streams on the European level, but to have people on the ground in some core markets, starting with Germany. We started with that in the last year with my role, and we now want to double up this capacity on the ground in Germany. And also in the near future, we want to expand to other countries and other core markets in Europe. We did that with the United Kingdom a few months ago, and there are other countries we also want to have people on the ground. But now, next step is to increase our capacity in Germany for the policy.
Exciting. So Ivo, you will be the line manager for this position. Can you tell us a bit about kind of how you collaborate within the team? So like within Germany, what's your vision? And then how does that fit within the policy team, within GFI Europe in general? And then maybe as well, like the collaboration with other affiliates across the world.
Yes, so you suggested to start with a very small unit. The smallest unit would be our Germany policy team, which would be the 2 of us. So we would be 2 persons on the ground, which are in charge of our policy work in Germany, and also a bit Austria and Switzerland. We really have to see whether opportunities arise there and whether we have the bandwidth to deal with them. This is the smallest unit, but we will work together very close. We're not looking for someone who's just an assistant. We really look for someone who has a very responsible role with own ownerships, who will, for example, be the lead for our policy events in Germany. Developing a strategy for that and realizing these events, and also for our policy work on the state level. And we will work together very, very closely in Germany. But you will also have very, very much contact points with a lot of people from GFI Europe. First of all, in the policy team. This policy team this will grow further. At the moment, we are 7 people. I think in half a year, we are maybe 10 people. For example, regarding those work streams, programmatic work streams, when it comes to how do we secure R&D funding for alternative proteins? How do we secure a fair competition for alternative proteins? How do we secure a solid and evidence-based path to market for example, cultivated meat? Then we work very close with the colleagues who are in charge of these work streams, and also the other people in the team. So, for example, our science managers, our communications managers, our corporate engagement managers. You will really have to do have a lot of meetings with them and a lot of cooperation with them. It's not just the 2 of us. So we are a broader team here in Europe. And we will have standing meetings every week where we are really aligning with them about our work here in Germany. This is GFI Europe, but as Catherine mentioned at the very beginning, we are 160 people. We are a large international organization with affiliates all over the world. And of course, we have a lot of cooperation with them. So for example, we do a lot of things with GFI Israel, who have done projects before that we are planning for the German markets, for example, an own state of the industry report, which is a long resource about the alternative protein space in Germany. Our colleagues in Israel did that before. And with other people as well, from Brazil, from the Asian Pacific Rim, from the US, of course. So you will get to know people from all over the world and work with them.
Thank you. That's definitely, I think, an exciting part of working with GFI, is that you get to work with brilliant colleagues from across the world. Maybe I can give a bit of context between, about the dynamics between GFI Europe and the other affiliates as well. So as I mentioned in the beginning, GFI started in the US in 2016, and then expanded into other areas of the world. So we are affiliates, so we have like a kind of agreement with the kind of flagship in the US. But we're also like very autonomous and independent organizations. So in practice, that means that we all have a similar mission and goals, like similar key overarching objectives. And we're all working toward those, toward this mission and those objectives. But then in practice, we all have a lot of autonomy in how we implement that for the local context, because obviously like the situation is very different in the US and in Europe, or in between Europe and Asia, all this kind of thing. So I think we really have the best of both worlds, because on one hand, like we do have this autonomy to do things the right way for a local context. So we have a lot of independence, but at the same time, we do benefit a lot from the collaboration between the different affiliates, from just like the experience and just the brilliant minds of our colleagues across the world. So I think that's a very kind of exciting and privileged position to be in. And maybe a word about kind of the structure of the organization. So as you mentioned, Ivo, we have like several teams within GFI Europe. So we have a programmatic teams. So we have obviously like the policy work that we do, that Ivo kind of touched upon. We have a SciTech branch as well. So working with the science community, trying to bring that innovation that we need to develop sustainable protein industry, and also just like working with businesses and like the industry itself as well. So to make sure that those projects kind of reach the consumers. On top of that, we also have a communications team and a philanthropy team, and then we have like the operations and leadership side of things. So for example, recruitment, which is what I do, falls within the operations. So that's kind of the structure within GFI. Someone is asking if you need to be vegan to join GFI. The answer is no. You don't have to be vegan. we meet people where they are, and we all come to GFI for different reasons. That can be to reduce animal suffering, that could be to prevent climate change, antibiotic resistance, global hunger. Like, we all have different motivations that bring us together, and I think that's also one of what makes the strengths of GFI, is that we appeal to a lot of different people, and we work to solve some of the biggest problems that we face today. Maybe, Ivo, you could tell us a bit more about your work specifically and what a typical day looks like in your job, if there is such a thing as a typical day.
There's no typical day. There's a typical Monday. On Monday, I think Mondays are following a certain pattern, because we have a lot of internal standing meetings on Monday where we come together as GFI Europe as a team and as a policy team, and then we align with the comms department on Monday. So Mondays are very typical. You have a lot of meetings, but every other day is really different. So it really depends on what we're doing. And if you have a look at the job description, it's kind of tasks we have there is very diverse. So sometimes you prepare a presentation for an event where you're giving a keynote or something like that. And speaking of how we work at GFI, your role would not only be to prepare charts for someone else to present. You really would present yourself at events, at workshops, roundtables, maybe even a keynote at a big event. Let's see how that works out. This could be on one day. Another day you could be traveling to an industry fair where we're presenting. You could just write a letter or prepare a white paper for a politician, or do some networking sometimes, or for example, meet a staffer from the Bundestag. It's very, very diverse what we're doing. And this is really what is so exciting about the job. And what is, maybe I can add this, GFI is still young. The whole alternative proteins space is still very, very young. And so we're kind of building something from the scratch. And this gives us really the exciting opportunity to create things that we think is the right way. And so how we spend our days is in the end in our hands. And this is also, I think, something which is really interesting and exciting about the job. You have a lot of autonomy about how we approach things, and when do you do what. That's in the end up to you. Yeah, but no typical day.
Yeah, I can definitely echo that about kind of the autonomy and the flexibility of the work. If you've looked at our job brochure or looked a little bit into our the careers page on our website, you've probably seen that we have a fairly thorough recruitment process. But that also means that in the end, we hire people that we really trust. We have just the most brilliant team I've ever worked with. Everybody is just mind-blowingly amazing at what they do. And that means that we can have that trust. We can give people a lot of autonomy. And I think that's like, yeah, autonomy and ownership, which I think is really rewarding. And also something that, yeah, personally, I really value with working at GFI. How often will we be traveling and in which countries?
Yes, so of course, since we're a European organization and an international organization, we have some traveling, but in the end, as a German team, we won't travel that much that some of our colleagues, which are in pan-European roles, do, because they have to give a presentation anyway. So what we're doing as a team is we are convening. So as you know, this is a remote role. You will be mostly working from home or from wherever you want. Of course, we have things like team engagement for that. And for that purpose, we meet. At the moment, we meet twice a year in the whole team. And this can be, for example, United Kingdom, in the Netherlands, you name it, anywhere in Europe. We have something similar in the policy team, where we really can go in detail in some policy topics and strategies. So you have at least 3 to 4 moments in the year where you travel abroad to somewhere in Europe. And also you have to do some traveling in Germany if we have some events here. Not everything is in Berlin. Things are in Hamburg, in Düsseldorf, sometimes in Frankfurt. One important thing is, of course, if you live in Berlin, then because a lot of things related to policy happen in Berlin, then yeah, you are in Berlin. If you're not in Berlin, then you must be willing to get to Berlin every couple of weeks because a lot of appointments will be in Berlin.
Cool, thanks, Ivo. I think I can probably take the opportunity to say a bit more about kind of our remote work, kind of working and culture. So yes, we're all working fully remotely. For colleagues in Brussels, we do have an office that people can go to, and we're also willing to just explore opportunities for co-working spaces if that's something that you would value and that would help you in your work. We're very conscious that not everybody wants to stay working at home every day, so that's definitely something we can explore. In terms of how we work, so as Ivo has mentioned already, on Mondays we do have a weekly meeting with the whole team where we kind of go through each of our priorities for the week. We also look back on accomplishments from the previous week, which is always quite exciting and quite amazing, just the amount of things that gets done in a week. For some organizations, that would be kind of just their annual report. So we do have a very celebratory kind of culture, looking at everybody's success and celebrating that together. We also do have those 2 retreats a year where we all get together. So usually we've had 2 this year. They were like the first full ones we've had because of just the COVID situation. So we were really excited to finally get to all meet each other and spend some time together, which was really nice. So the first one we expect to be around March each year, which will be mainly focused on kind of team connection, and then the second one to be more around September, October, where we really focus on strategy and planning for the next year. And on top of that, we do have kind of the fun kind of team connection activities. So we have the water cooler on Friday where we get together and just like chat about our daily lives or do some games or things like that. We just did like a survey from the team, just like seeing what were the needs in terms of team connection, and like the results were really positive. So really, I think people are happy just like the remote culture and the connection that they're able to have, even though we're remote. And yeah, so like exciting things happening as well on that round. So yeah, you've mentioned that no day is really the same and there's a lot of variety, but could you maybe say a word about the kind of projects that you expect this person to be working on, maybe like in the first 6 months, or yeah, any more information about that?
Yeah. First of all, at GFI, we have a very, very intense and very, very good onboarding, which takes about 2 weeks, where you really get to know a lot of people in the organization and where you really get deep dives into every topic that we are dealing with and into the strategies we are following. This is a very intense process. And after that, of course, we would have a session where we are refining our strategy. So we have a strategy in place for our work in Germany. And of course, with a new person coming in and with a small team of 2 persons, then we really would revisit this strategy and really think, how can we expand what we're doing at the moment and work as a team, who would take which responsibilities in just realizing this strategy. And then we would go to concrete work. Concrete work would be, for example, we want to have our first in-person GFI event in Germany. So this is something we want to have definitely in the first 6 months of this role. And this would be a bit of organizing, but this would also be about policy, because it is a policy event. We need to get the right speakers on board, and we need to approach people who could be interested, for example, MP staffers as audience. So this is going to be a huge project. Also, everything we do towards policymakers, their staffers, also journalists, is in the end relation building. And so a part of the first 6 months would just be getting to know the right people. So we would really develop an outreach plan and say, so of course we have lots of contacts that we already know, and we would introduce you to a lot of people in policy we know, and also in the alternative proteins space we already know. And then you would have introductory meetings with a lot of people in the space. And also what we want to do, where we didn't have that much capacity for in the last year, is expand our work towards non-profits, non-profits in the environmental space or public health space. And this would also be a big part of the new role. To help with that, or even take the lead, to know if it is something we would have to see once we have the successful candidate and we are revisiting the strategy, who would be the one who's driving this. So those are big projects, the policy event, and also this outreach agenda.
Okay, I think in brief, you won't get bored. Like there's a lot to do.
Definitely.
Exciting. Okay. Someone is asking, must candidates be native speakers of German? Do you want to take that, Ivo, or do you want me to?
I can take that. You don't have to be a native speaker. We try to make this process as open as we can, but we must say that for this position, we need excellent German, German in writing, reading, speaking. This is something we really know. So language is an important factor here, and we need excellent German. If you don't have it by being a native speaker, it must be at least excellent and proven excellence. Regarding English, I think this is another question that comes up. So the communication we have internally at GFI is obviously in English, and you need a decent level of English to do that. This is, I think, clear. You don't need to be a native speaker. As you can hear, I am not. And so this is okay, but you need to have a decent level.
Yeah, and I'm not either a native speaker of English, but yeah, this is basically like the communication language within the organization. As long as you're functional and just able to communicate with colleagues, that's fine. You don't need like perfect English at all. Cool. Thank you, Ivo, for the clarification.
And maybe to add that a lot of this stakeholder engagement we have in Germany is obviously in German. And so at the beginning of the job, it's a lot of English, because of course our onboarding is almost completely in English, but the more you really grow into this new job, the bigger the share of the stakeholder engagement you have here in Germany, which is mostly in German.
Yeah, and I think obviously, Ivo, I wonder if you're excited about having even more opportunity to speak German than having like another German-speaking colleague coming in.
Yes, definitely.
Exciting. On the topic of onboarding, someone is asking, are there offers or programs for further education? So I can probably say a word about just kind of professional development in general within the organization. So as Ivo mentioned, so we have a thorough onboarding process. So usually it's 2 weeks for the newcomer to kind of swim in information, just like get to really know like the organization, what we do, our strategy, our goals, get to know colleagues. That's a big part of it, just like meeting everyone and starting to build those relationships within the organization, getting to know your colleagues. So you have that period where we really try to protect newcomers from just like the workflow. So really giving them the time to get acquainted with everything. But then obviously learning doesn't stop after 2 weeks. So I think just with the nature of what we're doing, you keep learning a lot throughout just doing your day-to-day work. I personally know that I'm learning every day in this organization and in the work that I do. We also have a yearly budget for professional development. So if you want to take a course or if you want to order a book or this kind of thing, just like I think people should really be the drivers of their professional development as well. So you have that budget to seek out those opportunities, obviously like to discuss with your manager. And just professional development in general is just like a continuous conversation that we have with people, making sure that everybody's growing and going into the direction that they want to. Okay, another interesting question about the role for you, Ivo. What do you think would be the main challenges for this position?
Yes, the main challenge is of course a lot of people don't know what alternative proteins are or why governments should support it. We're still in a very early stage of it all, and the main challenge is we have very technical questions here, very technical new ways of producing meat and other animal products, and we really need to tailor those messages into very target audience specific messages. What do I mean by that? It is you will have a completely different conversation if you talk to someone who is, for example, someone in the space of green politics and who really sees, okay, we need to come down with animal agriculture numbers, with the number of animals in agriculture, who are already bought on this, and by to say, oh, isn't plant-based meat or isn't cultivated maybe a too unnatural way? You will have a completely different conversation with someone who thinks this way, or someone who's working in agriculture and has a decades-long background in animal agriculture and who does not see the necessity to reduce animal agriculture as we know it today. And you will have a completely different conversation if you want to make the case for alternative proteins with someone who's already bought in the idea of alternative proteins and is interested in startups and investments and things like that. So you really must. The challenge is really to see who are you talking with, where is this person coming from, what's the background, and what's the right set of messages to achieve what we want to achieve. And what we want to achieve is that people, policymakers and other people see the support, see the need to support alternative proteins.
So it's like a good challenge for someone who he's a good communicator and likes to tailor the messaging to different audiences and kind of make maybe some technical concepts accessible as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice, exciting. And how do you measure success for policy work? And how would you measure success for this role?
Measuring success. So we would be very, very successful if in the end, in maybe 1.5 or 2 years, policymakers, the government, relevant persons, policymakers in the parliament would really see alternative proteins as a way to solve a couple of societal problems, of really huge problems, and would have taken first steps to advance it. For example, what would be a measurable way to do this if the German government would earmark a certain amount of euros for open access R&D funding, then this would be a huge success. This would be something which would not be on your shoulders alone. So those things really need to be a team effort in the end. But those are the kind of policies we want to achieve. But this is we can only achieve such bigger goals if we go step by step. So I think what would be little successes that would be measurable is if we convince some relevant stakeholders. For example, if we win important non-profits in Germany for alternative proteins that support our asks, that could be little successes on the way to the big success.
Yeah, and the way we work toward that is that we have just cycles throughout the year, so just like semesters, or is it trimesters? I always mixes those up anyway. And so for each cycle, we do define OKRs. So those are objectives and key results. So we're usually pretty ambitious with those goals, and that means that we just strive to excel, but we don't always hit the mark in the time frame that we define. But we define those OKRs and just those objectives and kind of the steps to accomplish them with our respective teams, and then we discuss as an organization. So we have a show and tell meeting, kind of looking at what everybody's doing, so that we're not just working in our own little corner. We try to foster that collaboration, being aware of what other people in the organization are doing, and then just working towards those clear goals. I think it's a model that helps have a lot of clarity, and yeah, that's been working pretty well for us, I think. Do you have anything to add about that, Ivo, or just how you do that in the policy team or things like that?
No, but it's good that you mentioned it and that I forgot our okra system.
That's
which
right.
is working very well and gives you a lot of transparency about what everyone else in the organization is working on, and it's really good.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so someone was asking about when the job would start. So what I will do is that I will paste in the chat a link to our job brochure. And if you go there on slide number 14, you have a little outline of our process with just the timeline. So we're looking at conducting the rounds of interviews toward the end of January and through February. Obviously, this is subject to change. We don't have fixed dates yet, But so that's kind of the length of a process. It usually, from the date that we close, it usually takes between 5 and 7 weeks. We try to go through it as swiftly as we can, and we update all candidates at every stage. So whether you're successful in going to the next round, or whether it's not going to work out, but this time, like, you will hear for us, we inform everybody. And so once this process is wrapped up, basically, like, we're fully aware that people have notice periods, and that they can be sometimes a bit long, up to 3 months, I think. So obviously, we would be excited for this person to start as soon as possible. But yeah, again, for the right person, we're willing to wait the required time. So yeah, there's a bit of flexibility around that. I hope that helps. Looking at other question that we have. So I've talked about the timeline and expected start date. So maybe I can just say a word about our recruitment process. So when you apply, you have to fill in a short form, submitting your CV, and you also notice that we're not asking for a cover letter. We're asking instead for sample work tasks. And we ask you not to include any personal details in that document, because that allows us to assess it blindly, anonymously, so that we can reduce bias as well. And so for candidates who are successful at this stage, we invite them to a timed assignment, which is usually around 2 hours. And it's just like composed of a few questions that replicate the kind of tasks that you would be doing on this job. And the next step is a written assignment. So kind of a similar format without the kind of tight time limit on it. We usually give people up to 2 weeks to complete it. So you really have time to think about it and really just like, yeah, just have time to digest it. But in terms of the length of the assignment, it's in terms of word count, it's kind of similar, I think. It's around like 2,000 words in general. And through that process, you will receive an applicant number that we ask you to fill in with your assignment. Again, that allows us to assess fully anonymously. All assessments are looked at by at least 2 reviewers, and it's done again blindly, so they're not looking at each other's marks and all that, so that we can minimize bias and have a process as fair as possible. And so after those rounds of written tasks, we move out to interviews. I can say a word about just like people asking if we provide a laptop or some equipment. So I can say a word about that and kind of benefits in general. So we can definitely provide a laptop if you need one. The laptop will remain the property of GFI Europe. However, we also provide a home office setup allowance, which is, as I speak, 300 euros. And that's something you can use to buy a second screen or buy a printer or just like a good office chair or something, so that you're kind of comfortable in your workspace. And what you purchase with that allowance remains your property. What else? Let me have a look. So yeah, I think one of the main benefit working at GFI Europe is just like the flexible working arrangements that we can have. So for this role, we're looking for someone working full time, but then how you arrange your hours, there's a lot of flexibility for that. Again, we give a lot of trust and autonomy to people. So yeah, you can work from your home, you can work from a co-working space, you can travel if you want. We've had some colleagues who've enjoyed this kind of digital nomad lifestyle, as Ivo is even doing at the moment, joining us from Israel. So yeah, I think there's a lot of flexibility for that, which is for a lot of people quite exciting. I've mentioned the home office setup allowance. We also have a total of 36 days off per year, and that includes annual leave and public holidays. So kind of the the mix between those two, or just like the repartition between the two, will vary depending on which country you're based on, or based in, sorry. But yeah, for some countries, that's kind of the norm. For some countries, kind of generous, but then it means that we have like an equitable amount of time off for our team members across the organization. We also have kind of a 24/7 free confidential kind of employee support platform. So just like kind of confidential counseling and well-being support, which is available in like 40 languages or something, which is something that's nice to have. I talked about professional development, so all those kind of things. So I think that gives you kind of a picture of just like the benefits and arrangements at GFI Europe. Am I missing anything, Ivo?
No.
Cool, thank you. Let's see what questions we have left. Someone is asking, are you also targeting the federal states, since some policies like education are decided on this level? I think that's specific to Germany.
Yes, definitely. That's we started with that. So at the state level, of course, we see a different situation in the 16 states we have, but especially in Lower Saxony and in Bavaria, we see a huge interest in alternative proteins, and of course, a lot of things. The question how they fund universities and something like that are decided on the state level in Germany, and so this is interesting for us, and this is something we couldn't tackle in a way that we wanted to in the last 11 months. Since one reason why we decided to hire a second role for Germany, so that we can advance alternative proteins on the state level to a higher degree. We did that. We had a couple of opportunities in, for example, Lower Saxony in the last months, but we really want to expand this, and this will be part of the job. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Okay, we're almost toward the end, but I think we've gone through most of the questions. We have someone asking about who are the main donors to GFI. So GFI Europe and GFI in general, we are 100% powered by philanthropy. So we are funded by foundations and individuals, and basically people who are coming from, again, very different walks of lives and just having different interests. So I think, as I mentioned earlier, we are in this very interesting position that our work appeal to a wide range of people. So people concerned about climate change, global hunger, animal welfare, all those topics. So that's also reflected in the people who donate to GFI and who very generously just like support the work that we do. We wouldn't be able to do what we do without them. So always very grateful to our donors. But yeah, I think that's the main thing about it. Ivo, someone was asking about the professional path of other public affairs specialists. This is the first one that we're having, the first public affairs specialist role that we're having within GFI Europe. So we can't really speak for other ones, but I think maybe it could be interesting for people. You've talked about that already in the beginning, but like having a bit of an insight into your own background and what led you to GFI.
Yes, and I think it's also possible just to take the rest of the policy team as reference. So they maybe have other titles, but they're working in policy. So at the moment, we're a team of 7 people here, and they come from a very big, different backgrounds. We really have a diverse team in the policy team. So some of them were working in a parliament before, some of them were working in the government before, which is very close to governments, but not all. Some of them were also working in an embassy or in other non-profits. it's really diverse, and we really don't want to have a very narrow view here and say we require that you have 3 years there or 5 years there. That's not our approach to that. What we want to have in the end is someone who is able to build trusted relationships to people and policy, to do this well and to perform well on this job. I think it is necessary that you really have a clear idea and hopefully some experience in how does the political system work here. And not only how does it work formally, but also have an idea of what is lobbying. This should be, what is lobbying? How can we influence politics to advance alternative proteins? This is the key task here, and you have to have an idea how do you how you bring this experience. I think there are several possible ways, and that's why we won't tell a figure of experience you need for that. I personally did not work in a non-profit before. So I had an internship when I was much younger at Transparency International, but then worked in the private sector for a trade body and also for a public affairs agency, where I worked in both spaces. On the one hand, really did lobbying, talking to politicians, talking to policymakers, and on the other hand, also had communications tasks, a lot of communication tasks. So in the last 4 years before joining GFI, I led a team, I led the public relations team of the German association that is speaking on behalf of German airports and airlines, so something really completely different. And so what led me to GFI is really that I was always interested in fostering a sustainable food system. This was a private interest for me for really a lot of years. And at a certain point, I really wanted to make this a part of my vocational life. And that's what happened when I joined GFI.
And we're so glad to have you. Cool. I think we've answered all the questions that candidates have sent in. So maybe a good one to wrap up is, what do you like about working at GFI Europe?
Oh, I really love the team. The team is really, really, really nice. Catherine and all the other people who are involved in hiring really convened real talents from all over Europe, people who are very, very passionate about what they're doing and who are very professional in what they're doing. This is one point. The second one is that you really do something which has a purpose, which really is contributing a lot to making the world much better in a lot of ways, regarding animal welfare, regarding climate, regarding food security, which is a very important thing too. Those are the main reasons for me. It's the perfect team, and that you're really doing something for improving things in a couple of ways. And I also like flexibility, and something I mentioned earlier is that we really are in a very early stage of the whole operation. And I really like the idea of creating things from scratch, where you really can influence how things are going, and not only do things and continue things that other people invented for you.
Awesome. I always love hearing the answer to this question. Yeah, I totally agree. I think for me, it's exactly the same. Just the team is amazing. I generally really like everybody in our team. I think everybody's extremely nice, extremely collaborative, as well as just being amazing at what they do. And yeah, just the mission, just waking up every morning and getting to work to like help contribute to solving some of the biggest problems that we're facing. It's just like knowing that we're having an impact. It's just like a big motivation. And yeah, it's exactly the same, just like the flexibility that we have, just the trust and the ownership, just yeah, I think is really rewarding. So it's just like, to me, perfect package. So yeah, we hope that that got you excited and that you will consider submitting an application. Thank you very much and have a good rest of the day.